This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday with some affiliates and networks from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, and then some other affiliates carry us from 10 a.m. Eastern until 6 a.m. Eastern. And of course, we come to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Our email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. The February edition of the X Chronicles is now available. All you have to do is go to the X Chronicles newspaper newsstand and read it online with the compliments of our great advertisers, and that's at www.xchronicles-newspaperstand.htm. As well, the X-Zone apps are now available online for all Android devices, as well as the Apple iPhone, the Apple iPad, and the Apple iPod. One simple website for that, www.xzoneapps.com. My first guest tonight, X-Zone Nation, is a gentleman that I have the pleasure of speaking to on a regular basis. He wrote a fascinating book that intrigued me, and in fact, it's one of the books I keep on my desk at all times here in our studios. Peter Woolford is our special guest. He is the author of The Genesis Grid. Said he used to be the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, but now the search is over. X-Zone Nation, just for those of you who are joining us from around the world who haven't had the pleasure of hearing Peter on the show before, I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis. On January the 6th, 2010, computer scientist Fabrice Bellard hit the headlines worldwide with a record-breaking calculation of pi, the number of the circle, to nearly 2.7 trillion places. No pattern was seen or even expected. Mathematicians have all but given up on finding any system in pi. Now, in an apparently unrelated project, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence SETI, and of course we've had Seth Shostak on the show a number of times, has swept the skies for decades without any result. But now, a set of 6 numbers that underpin the Bible has given the ability to find in perfect remote pi positions. Now, in the past millennium, a race greater than man used this unique, unnoticed pattern in pi to build the Bible. Will they soon act to save us from a nuclear holy war? Holocaust? Apocalypse? Peter Woolford is my special guest. The Genesis Grid, www.genesisgrid.co.uk. And Peter, welcome back to the X-Zone.
Thanks, Rob. It's a pleasure to be back.
Let's see. You have been traveling the world. Congratulations to you on the wedding of your son in the Philippines. It's great. Send him our congratulations.
I will, certainly. Thank you.
And I have to ask you, Peter, we've got about a minute until I have to take a commercial break, so I want to keep the meat of the conversation until we come back. What was it like traveling around the world, knowing what you know now based on your book, The Genesis Grid? Do you look at the world differently?
I think I do, and I was stunned by the development of China, and always in the back of my mind was the thought that people now regard China as the great threat to, the world's stability. My host in China was an Englishman who runs a factory there, who assured me that this is not the case, and I had to agree with him because I know that the real threat is coming from Europe, and we've talked about this before. And I have an advertisement running, as you know, with similar publications
Nexus,
we just discussed, and that is about the Germans.
We're going to be touching on that in the second segment, Peter, but please stand by. Welcome back. I missed you, old friend. Exonation, Peter M. Woolford is our special guest. He's the author of a groundbreaking book that has to be part of every library, The Genesis Grid. www.genesisgrid.co.uk. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, and I'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break with my guest, Peter Woolford, as we continue from our studios in Hamilton.
This is Johanna Carroll, host of Dialogue with Divinity on the X Zone Broadcast Network. While walking along Kaanapali Beach in Maui this past year, I kept discovering all these shells and coral in the shape of hearts. My dialogue with Divinity was very simple. Do you want me to do a retreat to heal people's hearts in Maui next year? And of course, the answer was yes. As a master spiritual teacher, I am offering you a neat retreat called Rise, May 8th through the 12th, 2017, and the chance of a lifetime to rest at a 5-star resort for 5 days and experience a spiritual renewal of your heart and soul. Kaanapali is one of the top 5 beaches in the world. This stunning resort has undergone a $40 million renovation. I walked the entire property, checked out the room choices on your behalf, and I must say it is stunning. Our conference room faces the ocean with sliding glass doors. Maui is known as Mother Maui because it is a soft, gentle, healing energy. In the embrace of Mother Maui, you will feel yourself rising from the limitations of an ordinary life to an extraordinary journey of peace, bliss, and harmony. A greater sense of clarity. Our Rise retreat ignites renewal in the sacred elements of air, water, earth, fire, and wind. There's plenty of free time to enjoy all that Maui has to offer. A small deposit is required now to reserve your space, as this retreat, it will sell out. For more details, please go to johannacarroll.com and register today. Aloha, and I'll see you in mystical Maui.
And welcome back, everyone. Peter Woolford is my special guest. He's the author of The Genesis Grid. His website is www.genesisgrid.co.uk. Now, Peter, we're going to be chatting about somebody that you're well aware of, Professor Richard Dawkins, who wrote the best-selling book, The God Delusion, in 2006. And he's not only a biologist, an English biologist, but he's also a professional or a professor of the New College in Oxford. Now, I understand that the good professor is back in the news on the other side of the Great Pond.
That's right. He's been in the news for 2 reasons. He was interviewed a few days ago, and this was a fairly contentious interview with several people on the radio. And one of the people that he was debating with asked him if he could remember the full title of Darwin's book, Origin of Species. What led up to this question was that Dawkins had been criticizing religious people in England for not knowing anything about the Bible. Well, I certainly wouldn't disagree with him on that count. But when he was then asked to recite Darwin's book Origin of Species and the 21 words that follow, he couldn't remember them, and he looked very, very silly. But it was, of course, as he said, it was a cheap shot. It
Sure.
was a low blow. But it attracted a lot of media attention, which then led to a second reason for him being in the media. And the second reason was that, in fact, he was attacked because his ancestors had been involved in slavery, in exploiting slaves 300 years ago. And he was being told by people, well, you should be apologizing. You should be giving some of your money that you've made from all of your books to help slaves and so on. But his response has been, again, quite reasonable. His response was, well, no, it was nothing to do with me. I shouldn't be held responsible for what my ancestors did.
Yeah. But why are they picking on Professor Dawkins? I understand that he's got a very unique way of looking at things, but by trying to embarrass the professor, aren't they just defeating their own intelligence and their own integrity?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. They are, because if you're going to attack him, then you need to do something substantive rather than just resorting to gimmicks and low blows.
Mm-hmm.
His point was well made, that most religious people in the UK, and probably around the world for that matter, know very little about the Bible, and they don't really, do the things that they say, that they suggest that they would be doing,
right,
by claiming to be Christians, Muslims, or anything else. I think the point he makes about religion that I think is the most valuable is that he says that religion has been adopted. This is my description. This is my own wording. But he's basically religion by postcode. So if you're born in this place, you're a Muslim. If you're born in that place, you're Shintoist. If you're born in that place, you're a Catholic. That's a pretty illogical way to determine your belief system. And on that, I can wholeheartedly agree. What I don't agree is I don't agree that the theory of evolution is a full and satisfactory explanation of origins. And he himself has really basically cut himself off for the legs in some of the things that he has said recently.
It's a sad day when we expect people who have had nothing to do with what has happened in the past to be held responsible. And, I can understand the professor's position that, hey, listen, I had nothing to do with it, so why should I pay for other people's mistakes? Because if that was the case, Peter, my goodness, people around the world would always be paying for mistakes that other people made.
Absolutely, but it has become fashionable recently for politicians and other dignitaries to apologize for things that have nothing to do with them whatsoever. Tony Blair was doing this, apologizing for things like colonialism. Mm-hmm. This is ludicrous. Let's move on.
Exactly.
Besides, the British Empire brought a lot of benefits to other countries. When I was working in Dubai, I met a doctor of chemistry from Iraq. He told me that the British totally built Iraq during the First World War, when they had over 400,000 troops in the country. They built the roads, the schools, the hospitals. That country is wealthy today, as wealthy as it has been, because of the British. So really, all of this doom and gloom and nonsense about apologizing for the past, it's nonsense.
Well, you're singing to the choir over here, Peter, because, I live in Canada. Her Majesty the Queen is our reigning monarch. And as I may have told you, or I've told the Exo Nation, I write her a letter once a year, and I always get a reply.
That's astounding. That's astounding. Of course, she does have what we call over here ladies in waiting.
Yes. And in fact, the last letter I received was October of last year, and it was signed by one of her ladies in waiting. But it is a personalized letter, and because I said certain things in the letter that if it was one of these generic letters that you get, the specific references that I made in my letter would not have been there. But anyway, they weren't. I think it gives me a sense of pride. I still stand. I love hearing "God Save the Queen," and it's a part of history that I believe is so important to the development of a civilized country.
Yes, and on the subject of the Genesis grid, I do actually point out in that book that there is a very powerful theory with evidence that, in fact, today's monarch in the UK is descended from King David, and whereas she would herself claim, and that she is, in fact, sitting on what could be technically described as the throne of Christ.
Peter, I think that this is her 50th anniversary. Or is it the 75th? No, it's got to be the 50th.
1953, she took the job on.
No, wait a second. No, wait a minute. It's
65 years, is that?
That's right,
No.
65. Well, Craig's looking it up because we did a little pitch on it last week or the week before. But anyway, God save the Queen.
Yeah, absolutely. Biggest, greatest asset we've got.
Well, a lot of people laugh when I say, that women make the best rulers, and they say, "Oh, come on, what do you mean?" Well, let's look throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Cleopatra. You've got, Joan of Arc. You have Mary, Queen of Scots. You have Queen Victoria. You've got Queen Elizabeth.
Well, Queen Victoria didn't distinguish herself very well, actually. But don't forget Boadicea. We have a massive, very close to Buckingham Palace where the Queen lives, we have a massive black chariot in the middle of an enormous roundabout with Queen Boadicea, bare breasts, on this thing, chasing enemies, I suppose. Enormous scythes coming out of the wheels of her chariot to cut people down as she drove past. I think she was circa 300 AD, wasn't she? And she was English queen who took on the Romans, I think, but I know very little about it. But another powerful lady, probably had Margaret Thatcher.
The Iron Lady.
The Iron Lady.
She was fantastic.
She upset a lot of people, of course, but she did a few necessary things. I think the main thing being, rebalancing the power between business and trade unions. And
then, of course, Lady Diana.
Yes, I mean,
she was
taken popular figure.
Yeah, she was taken way before her time.
Of course.
Way before her time. So when we talk about history, Peter, how does that play into what we can look forward to or expect throughout the progression of time as described within the Genesis grid?
Well, as you know, I've described before the prophetic time frame, and it's a bit too complex to describe without diagrams.
Right.
Suffice it to say that I have pointed out what has been pointed out by many people before, that there is a relatively simple structure of successive kingdoms mapped out, world-dominating kingdoms mapped out in the Bible. They come clearly into focus when you...
Whoops, did we lose Peter? Whoops. Okay. Peter, are you there? All right, Exo Nation, it seems that we've lost Peter. We're going to try and get him back in a few minutes. So, once again, Exo Nation, the name of the book is The Genesis Grid. And Peter M. Woolford is our guest and the author. It's available at www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk. 1-800-610-7035 worldwide toll free. My name is Rob McConnell, and this is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable, as well as broadcast affiliates right across Canada, the United States, Central America, South America, the Pacific Rim, Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. Starting April the 1st, we will be on the TV Radio Network. That is a brand new network that is starting. It's going to be radio and television simulcast. That is starting on April the 1st. Oh, I'm not kidding you, Craig. I was speaking to Greg Potts, who is the head cheese over at TV Radio, and they also have another movie network called Movie. And we're going to be telling you all about this as we get closer to the launch date, where you'll be able to watch us locally and how you'll be able to watch us and listen to us via the internet. Exciting times here in the X Zone, and of course we're going to be reporting from Mexico as we investigate the Mayan calendar myth, and we're also going to be investigating in Belize the crystal skull of doom that was brought to fame and sometimes fortune by Edgar Mitchell Hedges, who is a Canadian. In fact, I've talked to his nephew, I believe it is, in Port Colborne about his uncle. He's written a book, And Anna Mitchell-Hedges used to live in Kitchener, Ontario, which is not that far from Hamilton. And we're going to find out what exactly the truth is pertaining to the Mayan calendar and the Crystal Skull of Doom. 1-800-610-70355, 1-800-610-7035 is worldwide toll-free. And I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our studios in Hamilton,
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome back, everyone. We've been able to get Peter Woolford back. Technology is great when it works. And Peter, I'd like to welcome you back. And thanks very much for taking time out of your evening to join us here in the X Zone.
No problems at all.
Now,
glad to be back.
All right. Before we went to the commercial break and before we had our little communication problem, I wonder if the aliens snuck up one of those satellites. I doubt it. But anyway, that's what I'm sure some people are thinking. I understand you have some great quotes from Professor Richard Dawkins that apply to what you and I are talking about.
Yes. Well, I remember one thing that happened last year. I came across a film that had been made. The film was called Expelled. And in that film, Professor Dawkins was being interviewed by Ben Stein. And he asked Professor Dawkins about the appearance of the first living cell. Now, this was of great interest to me as somebody who has been promoting structures in the Bible and so on.
Right.
And but what he was asked, and this was the question put to him, he said, where do you think the first cell came from? His response was this, quote, "The origin of the first self-replicating molecule? I've told you I don't know. No, nor does anybody else know." So Ben Stein came back with this question. He says, what do you think of the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution? And the answer he gave fits in exquisitely well with the quote you read from the front page of my book earlier this evening. Richard Dawkins said the following, quote, "It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some Darwinian means to a very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. You might find evidence for that if you look at the details of our chemical and molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer, and that designer could well be a higher intelligence," close quotes. So that's what Dawkins did. He invoked, in effect, little green men to explain the appearance of life on this planet. And that is what you could call circular reasoning, isn't it? Because then you have to ask the question, well, who gave them their first living cell?
Exactly.
So really, he has cut off the theory of evolution at its very base by making this comment. Now, he didn't have to say that, but it was the only explanation he could give for the appearance of the first living cell, because he knows perfectly well that a living cell is far more complex than we used to think. It's really more complex than a whole warehouse full of laptops. And a whole warehouse full of laptops couldn't reproduce itself in the way that living things can. So, in fact, life on this earth is the ultimate technology, and it cannot be explained by ideas of things spontaneously jumping out of lukewarm puddles of water on the edge of volcanoes.
What are the chances, in your estimations, Peter, that we humans, as we are and as we have biologically developed on this planet, are alone in this universe?
The book raises that question, doesn't it? In fact, there's a quotation on my all-new website, genesisgrid.co.uk. The quotation is from the very well-known author who wrote the book 2001, whose name eludes me, but everybody knows who he is.
Sir Arthur Clarke?
Arthur C. Clarke. And what Arthur C. Clarke said was this. He said there are two possibilities. Either we're completely alone in the universe, or we're not completely alone in the universe. Both possibilities are terrifying. So it's a good question. I think that the universe is sterile. It appears sterile. And I know that we're discovering more and more planets, but I think that the SETI group is going to continue to be disappointed. That's my own feeling.
I agree with you, because they may be looking for something that's not even being used in another planet. For example, we, for some reason, expect that life on other planets should be carbon-based. But what happens if they're silicone-based? What happens if we're looking for a frequency that isn't within the range that our technology allows us to scan?
Well, indeed. But then I would say this, that if Richard Dawkins, of all people, cannot come up with some reasonable explanation as to how living things can come from inert matter, then probably nobody can, because he spent his whole life looking for those sort of answers. I'm inclined to think, I strongly do believe, that life couldn't come into existence on its own, that the complexity of the living cell is such that it had to be created, it had to be designed by a master intelligence, and the evidence would suggest to me that that intelligence does not inhabit the physical universe.
Where do you think this intelligence lives, resides, exists?
In another dimension of existence, a higher dimension of existence.
Is there any evidence to substantiate that?
I think that the Genesis grid substantiates it, because what it does, it proves the existence of a set of numbers which predate the Bible, and which also are stamped upon the laws of music, the periodic table of elements, and other things which are fundamental to the physical universe. Then that in itself suggests that the pattern pre-existed the physical universe.
How do you... I'm sorry, Peter.
So I was going to say that I think that, I know it sounds terribly dry and factual and academic, but I do therefore advance the argument that the fact that the Genesis grid is hidden in the Bible, and it's quite obvious when you look at it and you see that, for example, the first chapter of Genesis is built on the first 31 digits of pi, as I have proved, and academics have reviewed this. They're on the website. Go to the website, you'll see that nobody with even the highest qualifications has been able to gainsay my discovery. This proves the existence of a higher intelligence that is not based on the physical universe, but inhabits another plane.
How do you feel the advances in quantum physics are going to affect the Genesis grid?
Well, I'm not a scientist, and from what little I know about quantum physics, I think that they may help. Advances in that area may help computing.
Right.
And it may well be that the human brain uses some kind of a quantum multiplier to gain the enormous capacity that it has. But you have to ask why animals who have pretty near identical brains don't have the abilities that we have. And I think that the reason for that is that my own guess, and I have no proof or any evidence for this, but I think that it's probably that brains are like radios, and some are tuned to one frequency, others are tuned to other frequencies. And I've often wondered why it is that savants and people who have these superhuman abilities to do calculations and memorize things, a common feature with those people seems to be that they have suffered some kind of physical, organic injury to the brain. And maybe, therefore, and this is just my wild theory, please don't take this as me being dogmatic in any way, but the tuning knob of the radio has been in some way knocked to the wrong frequency, and that these people have acquired godlike powers that they actually are not supposed to have.
So let me ask you this question. Who was God, or who is God, or what is God?
The Bible doesn't say, assuming that the God of the Bible is God, where he came from. He doesn't reveal that. In the Bible does say that secret things belong to God, and if the God of the Bible is real, then there may be things that he will never disclose, ever. I heard one theory in a book called Intelligence Behind the Universe, that in fact God might have evolved in the way that a computer could evolve in some kind of three-dimensional cobweb as a result of winning battles with other computers. That's one theory. I don't personally subscribe to it. Nobody knows. The answer is nobody knows except the Bible itself. If that is the source to give us the answer, it says that he inhabits eternity. That's in Isaiah. He lives in this place called eternity. And of course, the famous passage in John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, identifying the two entities that appear in the Genesis grid pattern. They've always existed. That's what we're told in the Bible. And you and I, of course, because we have a beginning and an end, we cannot understand something that has always existed.
Mind you, as you and I have discussed in the past, I believe that this universe or this existence is a binary existence. Not unlike a binary code for example, if there's if there's right, there's wrong. If there's up, there's down. If there's in, there's out. If there's white, there's black. If there's good, there's evil.
It's very much like that. And,
yes.
There appears to be sort of the yin and yang, the opposites, good and evil. And yes, it's a very duality to be in everything, doesn't it?
And of course, duality is part of a binary system, and pi is just another mathematical sequence that you have discovered rooted in the Bible.
Yes, of course, it's expressed in the base 10, not in binary arithmetic. Binary has basically only really come to the fore in the computer age because, it's like the front gate on your house. It's open or shut.
But you just said it's based on the mathematical 10, and 10 in itself is in my books, or the way I look at it, a reference to a binary, because it's 1 is 0 and binary is 0, 1. So, who knows?
Well, it's similar, I suppose, in that sense. But there is a scientist, a German scientist called Peter Pflichter, who I quote in my book, and he has put forward some very good arguments to support the idea that the laws of the universe are based on the number base 10. In which case one would suspect that because the Bible is base 10, that the beings behind the Bible are also thinking in base 10.
How does this work with other planets, the solar system, the universe itself, Peter? Does it extrapolate outwards?
I'm not sure what you mean.
All right,
what are we extrapolating?
All right, we take the Genesis grid. We take pi. And, in your book, you've done a great job of showing how it relates to the Earth, the Bible. But does it also relate to other planets within our solar system? And can we apply it to other forms of science, and how it can apply to that so that it can be brought back and pointed back to the Genesis grid?
I'm not aware of anything like that. I mean, the discovery that I've explained in the book is centered upon the solar eclipse, where the sun is covered precisely by the moon, because, as you know, it's 400 times wider, but it's 400 times further away.
Yes.
That condition is unique to planet Earth, and there is no other planet in our solar system that has a perfect eclipse. Our own eclipse is a double coincidence, because not only does it involve that exact fitting, but the distance and width in each case is a round number. It's a round number 400. And Isaac Asimov described that as the most unlikely coincidence imaginable.
Do you think there is such a thing as a coincidence, or do you think that everything is planned?
I do, but think there are plenty of coincidences. But when you get about 50 of them in a row, all pointing the same way, then you have to wonder, I think someone's done this deliberately.
Isn't that the truth? How do you see the Genesis grid being used in the future?
Well, I think it will become very controversial. I think that as the years go by, although the media are hostile to anything like this, and they fawn over anybody like Professor Richard Dawkins, I think that they will, as the years go by, they will be forced to take a look at this. I think it's also a function of how much money I spend on promoting it. At the moment, my budget is low.
Right.
So who knows what the future holds, but I intend to continue to promote it, and I will also be holding public meetings, and I will let you know about that. Well, I will invite anybody, including Richard Dawkins, to come and tell me where it's wrong, because, as you know from the website, there are reviews there from very highly qualified academics showing that they can't find anything wrong with it.
Peter, we've got about a minute before I have to take my next break. Why do you think that this is such a controversial topic? Like, it shouldn't be looked at as a taboo topic. Why isn't it talked about more openly, more freely?
Well, it might be if this was being publicized in China or the Philippines or something like that. But in the UK, and I think this is true of the Anglo-Saxon world generally,
right,
there is an enormous antagonism towards the Bible. The very nations that actually should be Bible experts and proponents, and whose history and constitution and legal systems are all based on the Bible, they are the ones who are most actively rejecting it. And it was Charles Darwin, an Englishman, in 1859 who produced the book Origin of Species, which more than any other thing has smashed the credibility of the Bible.
Peter, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. Exonation, what a guest. Peter M. Woolford is my guest. He's the author of the Genesis Grid, www.genesisgrid.co.uk. I'll be back on the other side of this break with Peter.
In over 36 years in law enforcement, I've learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, extraterrestrials, and UFOs, how we gather that evidence of their existence, preserve that same evidence, and present it to a court of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Come with me on a journey that seeks to prove with undisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Join me, Larry Lawson, host of the Paranormal Stakeout, coming to the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Check out the broadcast schedule for Paranormal Stakeout with yours truly, Larry Lawson, at www.xzbn.net. For more information about me, my travels, and my team, check out our website at www.paranormalfbi.com or join us on Facebook at Florida Bureau of Paranormal.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. 1-800-610-7035 is our toll-free number. Peter M. Woolford's our special guest. He's the author of the Genesis Grid. www.genesisgrid.co.uk. Peter, always great having you with us here in the X Zone. Before we went to the break, you were saying that you're going to be doing some public speaking. And do you still get a lot of skeptical people who talk to you about the Genesis Grid, or are people, once you talk to them, they better understand what the entire message of the Genesis Grid is, and they kind of agree with you?
I found that virtually everybody agrees with it, and I met a friend in the cafeteria yesterday, and I showed him a slideshow, which was just an excerpt of what I would be showing at a public presentation, and he was absolutely stunned. A very well-educated man, and he just said, "Absolutely, I'm just stunned by this." I had an experience several years ago where I met a business friend in Dubai, and we just sat in a hotel lobby for a pint of beer at about 10 o'clock at night. And somehow we got onto the topic, and I mentioned the eclipse, I mentioned the 7s and 11s, I mentioned, what Bullinger, the theologian, had found, and how I'd solved that mystery. And I just told it to him like a story, and after about an hour, he was absolutely mesmerized. I don't have trouble with anybody. I mean, I saw a Cambridge scientist recently, not the one on the website, but another one. I showed it to him. He was very stressed by what I was showing him after about an hour. He said, you have a pattern, and this was a guy who was ex-Los Alamos researcher, PhD in physics. He learned Hebrew as a boy, so when I showed him the stuff in Genesis, it all made sense. These are people with the best analytical skills in the world, and they've not been able to find any fault with it.
What do you think the biggest... let me rephrase this. In your opinion, Peter, what will it take before the clergy look at the Genesis Code and say, you know what, Peter M. Woolford, you're right?
They'll never look at it. And I had it reviewed by a so-called Christian magazine in America. They called it popularist hysteria, and that quotation is on the website. So I can assure you that will always be and continue to be the response of mainstream Christianity. And you read the book, you can see how I basically strip them naked by showing that their teachings totally contradict the Bible.
But other members of the clergy that we have had on the show also say the same thing about the Bible, that the Bible contradicts itself, and it shows no evidence whatsoever of being written by a divine entity or a divine being.
Well, they discredit themselves, and the fact is I've never said anything like that, Rob. What I've said is that their beliefs, their doctrines totally contradict the Bible. So it doesn't surprise me that they don't hold the Bible in very high esteem.
Yeah, gotcha. Peter, quickly give our listeners your website. We've got less than a minute.
It's an all brand new website now with fantastic new graphics, very short wording, and it is still the same address, www.genesisgrid.co.uk.
Peter, always great talking to you. Looking forward to talking to you again in the next couple of weeks. So until then, take care of yourself. I'm glad you're home safe and sound. And once again, our congratulations to your son on his new family.
Thanks. I'll pass that on. Thanks. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye now. Peter M. Woolford, www.genesisgrid.co.uk. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past as we continue right here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Don't go away.